filmmaking is one of the more last remaining modern ways to create empathy with people. So all film is about sharing ideas, sharing stories of different cultures, different people, different experiences, and saying something about the world. And I think it's the one way that we can create empathy without, if the film is done well, without preaching it to them.
Thank you for tuning in. This is the TILè Shorts Roll to Feature podcast. Our guest tonight is Matt Dooley, and my name is Shay.
Hi guys, I'm Brenda.
As previously mentioned, I'm Matt.
And can you give the viewers a short idea of what all you do? I know it's a lot.
Sure. Well, like a lot of indie filmmakers, I wear a lot of hats, but primarily I'm a writer-director. I've written and directed 2 short films here in the Bay Area so far, and I have a 3rd one that's in development currently. So my main role is writer and director of those projects, but I also dip my hands into producing and music and sound design and editing as well.
Okay. Out of everything that you listed, what would you say is your strongest suit?
Probably writing. I think that, at least for me, in terms of being a director, it amazes me when I see directors take on scripts that aren't theirs, because from my perspective, those two are really interlinked. When I write something, I kind of picture it in my head. I picture the pacing, the shots, and everything. So by the time I get to directing, I've already seen the movie in my head.
Right.
So from that standpoint, I really fall back to my writing to kind of have the best idea how to approach any project that I do.
Okay. So you did bring up a thing that I've noticed even with myself, like writing and being able to visualize the project. So in those situations, do you find it difficult to allow someone else to assist you in like directing or changing the vision?
I think I have a really good team that I met through my first project, Let Me In, which we talked about briefly. They really, Mandy and Sean, my assistant director and DP, do a good job of, when we're location scouting, bringing a practicality for decision making for where you're putting the camera, what's practical, what types of shots are practical. So I think by the time you get to that actual production standpoint, I am kind of open to making decisions or compromises in case you want to, a sweeping shot or something specific, seeing what's practical to the location. I have a couple of examples from the last Western I did, The Painter, which based on the location, we changed the types of shots we could do. And you just kind of make those compromises and work around, what's available to you.
It's finished.
Yes. That's it.
That's all right, man. I want to tell you again. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Okay, so how did you get into this film industry? Like, was that always a passion of yours from this jump, or did you go to school for it or anything?
Yeah, I've been a writer for a long time. I remember writing like a 30-page Star Wars comic book when I was in 4th grade. And so I would come up with entire ideas, and as a kid you always think about stories and storytelling. And then when I think I got into high school and then later in college was when I was primarily a short film and then a feature film writer. So in college and high school around that time I wrote like 4 or 5 feature-length scripts, of which they'll never be able seen in the light of day because I don't know about their quality. But it's the act of doing it in the practice, right? Like any muscle, you're practicing it, you're working on your craft, you're understanding how to structure story. So for a long time I've been involved with writing, and then when COVID came around, like a lot of us, I was at home thinking about projects, and I had submitted to screenwriting competitions before, done well, gotten to quarterfinals, semifinals of this and that, but I felt that, there's a business aspect and a human aspect to filmmaking as well, right? So if I hand you, what's your guys' favorite movies, for example, recently, like just one off the top of your head? Everything Everywhere All at Once, or
Poetic Justice.
Poetic Justice, okay.
I really like Get Out.
Get
and
Out?
Us by
Okay, and
Dooley.
Us. So if I, for example, am just a person that you know at a networking event, and I hand you a 120-page script, and I say, this is Get Out, and it's my new feature, it's a horror movie, it's socially conscious, you'll be like, okay, I'm gonna take this, and then when am I gonna have the time to read a 120-page script for most people who aren't interested in writing or anything serious like that? So I had been writing for so long, and I had so many great, scripts and short films, but it's hard to get it into people's hands and to get them more engaged. So I thought if I could create concept shorts that are accessible, that are low budget, easy to produce, I could build my portfolio a lot quicker and get to the work that I want to do by able to say, hey, instead of this 120-page script, here's a 10-minute short that I did. This is what I'm capable of. Maybe we could partner to do something else in the future. So that's how I kind of wanted to step up and evolve what I was doing.
Okay. Strategy. Like that.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Is there any genre of a short film that you haven't done yet that you want to in the future?
That's a great question. I'm sure you guys have thought about ideas or concepts that aren't fully baked, that there's missing some element. I would love to do a sci-fi short film, but I do feel like sci-fi is very heavily represented in short film stuff. Like YouTube channels like Dust have really good sci-fi short films. And probably for what you guys think in any projects you're involved in too, is you want it to be original and you want it to say something meaningful, right?
Yes.
So there's plenty of cool sci-fi ideas I have, but attaching that to characters that have an arc or some concept that is more digestible is the thing that I'm missing. So definitely would love to do a sci-fi. I've done a horror film, I've done a Western. My next one would be like a war dramedy, comedy kind of in the style of like a Wes Anderson war film kind of. So I like to hop around and try new genres, and when I write, I primarily think in genres first. So yeah, I'd love to do sci-fi, but you just gotta let the ideas cook until something bubbles up, right?
Right. So since she did just ask about any genres you would like to try, is there any that you would feel you would rather direct than to write?
That's interesting. I think maybe when you think of those types of collaborative projects where you're more just in one traditional role, I would actually love to really direct a music video locally here in the Bay Area. One as kind of like a little aside from my projects to kind of say, hey, I can also do this type of work. For example, I think David Fincher, the horror movie director of Seven and all those other movies, he primarily started out in music videos. A lot of those people in the 90s did, right? Because that was just primarily the paid work. So, but doing it for a local band or something here in the Bay Area where you can really share someone else's vision and bring that to life and maybe collaborate a little bit with your own ideas, that type of project kind of probably more interests me for something that just has one traditional role. Because it is hard to let go of your babies, right? When you've written something, it's kind of like you have the idea in your head. So yeah, probably a music video would be interesting maybe sometime in the future to pair up for that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So yeah, letting go of babies. Oh my God, every single project that I do, I feel like I cannot outgrow myself because I'm always stuck on what I created, even though it's probably good to go. So my question is for, let's say, the painter. Do you find yourself in a situation where you got stuck, you were struggling to finish this storyline, to finish the dialogue, and how did you overcome that writer's block?
I think that's something that definitely a lot of younger writers face, and It's an interesting kind of question, right? Because some people kind of take a look at writing more analytically. Like I've read all the major like screenwriting books, like Story by Robert McKee and all these other screenwriting books. And eventually at the end of the day, the motto that it's not mine, but I picked up from someone else was KISS, which is keep it simple, stupid, which really helps when you think about, if you have 10 different character ideas, you think about how can you get just, at least for my first two movies, 2 characters in a room talking about something to keep it low budget. What is the genre to make it unique? What are the rules of that world to make it unique? And what's the twist and or midpoint turn that makes that story kind of, interesting to the viewer? So from that perspective, talking about The Painter, I was kind of thinking about, how do you get in a Western 2 people in the same room for about a 5-minute conversation with some sort of twist or reveal. So for that particular one, it's like, well, what if the bounty hunter is in disguise and he's chasing an outlaw, but the outlaw doesn't know that it's a bounty hunter. So you have underlying tension that kind of already exists in the scene. So I think just by finding simple solutions, not trying to overstuff your script with too much that's going on, even if you have ideas that you would love, is a good way to try and just problem solve when you're writing something.
Okay. So I did want to kind of shift
Sure.
to a little more personal.
Sure.
So you did state that you have a background in finance. Do you ever find that you have to remind yourself hey, I'm not in the finance space anymore in this, at least in this space? Or do you find that as a strength when planning, directing, writing a movie?
I think, at least for me, it gave me a really good grounded approach to stuff because, if you come from a business perspective, ultimately all creative projects, so to some extent, are a business. You're dealing with other people, you have to know how to manage teams, you have to know how to manage your money and what you're spending it on. So from that perspective, I think it helped ground me where I think a lot of frustrations for other artists, especially younger artists, come from because they look at roadblocks and they look at people saying, no, you can't do this for X, Y money, and they think, oh, they just want to destroy my vision. I think the finance aspect of it helped put practicality in it. And I also think, prior to actually making my own movies, I had, great 120-page sci-fi epics set on other worlds and aliens and other characters. And I think, doing stuff at a limited approach really helps actually grow your creative writing and directing skills because you're forced to come up with interesting situations that are in, one location or just limited concepts. So I think that type of stuff is actually beneficial because it kind of grounds you and presents creative opportunities for you to try and grow your skills with.
Okay.
I like it. I don't know. I know obviously everyone would like to have $20 million to do whatever type of production they want. But also sometimes in some cases, if someone hands you $20 million, you might go, oh, I don't actually know what to do with it now that it's actually here, right? So it kind of helps to step up your kind of filmmaking skills because the budget difference between my first film and my second film was tenfold in terms of locations and characters and getting a horse and 3 filming days versus 1 filming day. So people move and learn at different rates, and I think it's always good just to try and get out there and film something so you can start having those skills grow.
Okay. So I have another question.
Sure.
So Let Me In looks like it's more of a post-apocalyptic setting,
for sure,
modern day. But Painter is 1800s, maybe?
Yeah, Westerns, yeah.
So to me, it seems like you don't mind jumping into different time periods. Do you find any challenge in trying to make sure that the settings and everything matches the historical context of that time? And if so, what time period would probably be the most challenged, but something that you want to tackle at some point?
That's an interesting question. I was just watching Once Upon a Time in America, which is a Sergio Leone film. He did. He's an Italian director who did The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly,
Yeah.
and a bunch of other westerns. And that movie is set in like 1910, 1920s, like I think Prohibition America or sometime around there. And I was just thinking, you know, these days sci-fi is actually probably a lot easier to do than like a period piece, because especially for like a western, you have to have such specific clothes, such specific look. And especially if you're shooting in a location like the Bay Area, one challenge was finding a location to shoot in, because most of the Western locations are wedding venues or honeymoon venues that run you a pretty price per day. So we actually found our Western venue at like a park up in Walnut Creek, a historical ranch and park. So, you know, and from a genre perspective, I think actually the biggest challenges are like period pieces, like, I don't know, Atonement or some sort of Keira Knightley picture or something where you have to have a lot of flair and stuff. So, you know, that is all taken into consideration when you write something, is the practicality of what you're going to shoot. I mean, for example, for this next third one that I'm doing, I already wrote 5 other short film ideas and fully fleshed them out. One of them was a modern day story about a girl trying to become class president, and it's how about like the rich kid that she's going up against as class president. It's just like a political, you know, kind of comedy about modern day America. Another one was a 1920s Prohibition, like Road to Perdition, sort of Miller's Crossing type of movie that was like 15 pages about these 2 brothers who like grow up on the street and one of them betrays the other. And then another one was like a horror movie where the concept was, how do you get an audience to root for someone to be possessed in a movie? So it was about like this little girl who's like with abusive parents, and she finds a friend in like this book that has a spirit in it, and the only way to escape the house and like her getting killed by her dad is for the demon to possess her. So you always try to think about like, what are the rules of the genre you're doing? What have people seen before? We've all seen possession movies, but like, how can we get the audience to root for someone to get possessed by a ghost, right? So, long way of saying, just you just take a look at the genre, you take a look at how practical it is to shoot, and then you just try to think of something that is unique to your voice or something you want to say about the world that's unique to your experience.
Yeah, I see that you have so many ideas for all these films. And are you inspired by anybody growing up? Like, do you look up to any director and writer that you want to pursue their pathway to?
Sure. You know, I think that's always like a mix, right? Because everyone grows up in such unique circumstances. Like, someone might be more looking at Japanese films, or if you grow up in India, you're watching Indian and Bollywood films, right? So primarily, you know, of course, is the Star Wars or George Lucas or any types of the big blockbusters that were coming up in the 90s. Whatever you could get on VHS at Blockbuster, right, is usually what you were accessible to. So, you know, I think it's been a meld of a bunch of different directors and storytellers, and I really just like to watch stuff from everywhere, because you're never done learning, right? Because even as a kid, you have influence, but you can't really put words to concepts. Like, you don't know what a character arc is. You don't know why that music is so moving in that moment. It's only really, you know, later as you learn about how it's all put together and watching how movies are all put together, do you kind of, I think, like, really cherry pick where your influences are from. Like, you know, for my latest one, I was thinking the costume design is the first thing that came to mind. Like Grand Budapest Hotel with Edward Norton has this ridiculous like mustache, and he looks like a detective, and he has this very like stylized uniform. I was like, that is the type of like tone that I want to have for this two short about these two border guards on like opposing nations who are having a conversation. So that's like what the third short's going to be about. So you just kind of cherry pick, and you know, you never kind of know what ideas are going to subconsciously come to fruition when you're writing something, right? It's just some idea or some image sometimes that just stays in your mind, or a piece of music is really stuff that inspires me, because I played saxophone for 8 years, so music is a big part of like what helps me write and think about themes and characters and stuff like that.
Okay. For Do you compose any of your films too, or?
Not great, but I can whistle a tune, I guess. I guess I'm good. I have a good reference library, I guess I would say. I love listening to film scores, and I really love many different composers. So when I'm scoring my own movie, I'll give direction to the composer. I worked with a really great composer, Spencer Keane, who's here in the Bay Area. He's a fantastic and really talented composer, and he was able to put together that amazing guitar score that we had. And I was able to just kind of cherry pick from Western movies that I had seen, or it's just, I guess because of my band experience, I just kind of know what instruments are interesting perhaps for characters, like something heroic as a French horn, or something you want that's haunting as like an echoed trumpet, or just, I don't know, it's just kind of like things that subconsciously boil to your mind, and you're just like, let's try this little sprinkle. It's kind of like learning how to cook, right? You're like, let's throw in a little bit of this. Okay, that tastes good. We'll go with it. And it's an awesome kind of feeling to be able to have with a composer who's really open-minded and supplies their own ideas as well too, because you can say, boom, that's like right along the tone, the feeling that I want. Let's keep pushing that. Let's keep going that way. So it's a mix of many different things for the music elements for sure.
Basically, so when you brought up the cooking analogy, that just made me think of a question that I was not thinking of asking. So,
yes, I can cook. That's good. Good stuff. I'll cook you a mean pasta.
That's what I'm talking about. So has there ever been a short film that you started off making, you tried to do tweaks, and then you realized, like, what, I'm done. Like, they probably reach out, hey, are we going to shoot for next week? And you're like, no, it's canceled. Like, have you ever had that?
Thankfully, I haven't had that. The only short film I tried to do before COVID really was, I was inspired, and kind of roundabout in a way, it's come back to my third film. I was inspired by a trailer for an Israeli movie called Foxtrot, which is just a 1-minute shot of these two soldier guys in the desert. And then a bunch of like mambo music comes on, and one of the soldiers just starts to dance really weirdly. And I just thought, man, this is something that I want to do. Like, it's weird, it's strange, it's new. I don't know what it means, but it's, as Will Ferrell said, it's evocative, it gets the people going. So it, if any art inspires any type of feeling or reaction out of you, you connect to it for some subconscious reason that you'll think about later, right? So I was like prepping like way before COVID when I was younger, like 22, 23. I was prepping some sort of like short film to do with that. I even like filmed my friend and I like choreographed a dance routine, and we were practicing in the park. And I put together like a whole military uniform, and then like we were both just like, we'll just go to do other projects or something. So it's kind of like that. It's like at some point in your life, you might have inspiration, but you really got to put the team together. You got to put the budget together, and people really respond strongly to strong organization, right? So if you have a very unique, strong vision, if you know how to work with different personalities, I think that makes the difference between a project that doesn't get off the ground and a project that can assemble together and be completed, especially on the independent levels, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a fun question for you.
Sure.
If you had the opportunity to be able to collaborate with any director out there, and you had the opportunity to cast one actor of your choice, anywhere, anyone, who would it be and why?
That's an interesting, good question. I really liked, I might say his name wrong, which is terrible, and I'm bringing him up, but Joseph Kuklinski. I really hope that's well. Joseph, if you're watching, I'm so sorry. But he directed two recent films, probably the biggest ones in recent memory. He directed Top Gun Maverick, and then he directed Tron Legacy with Jeff Bridges way back when. And I still remember watching Tron Legacy in the theater when I was in high school, and then later partying at Disneyland when they had a bunch of Tron stuff, which was like super cool, live the movie sort of situation. And I just remember he had a very unique kind of vision for that project, and kind of like other directors, he took like his background in architecture and he applied it to like Tron, which has very unique production design and very unique aesthetics. It's kind of like, I just think he has a very methodical way of approaching filmmaking, a very calm, rational, but passionate way, which I think is at least the way that I approach stuff. Because I think as a film director, you want someone who's calm, level-headed, but also very enthusiastic and, you know, kind of the fuel to the fire for the project. People follow that type of thing, I think, and I think he displays a lot of that in his interviews and behind the scenes stuff. And then if I could work with any actor, I really like weird character actors, like I guess Paul, if you're watching, Paul Dano, I think is a really interesting character actor in There Will Be Blood, and he was the Riddler in Batman, and he's been in Prisoners and a bunch of other movies, and I really like interesting side character actors, or like John Turturro, who's like in The Big Lebowski as Jesus the Bowler, and in a bunch of other weird movies. Like those actors where maybe for the general public you don't know their name, but you know their face, and they pop up in the movie and go, hey, that guy is really great. So I really like strange character actors and people who take on more unique, weird roles, and I think someone like him would be really fun to work apart and pick his brain on a script or something. Yeah.
So, I have another fun question,
Sure.
I think. What superhero or villain you would say that you most identify with, you would love to write something similar about or revamp?
That's interesting. I feel like the obvious question is probably the one you should go with, like, just as a writer, director, producer, person of all hats, Batman, because he's always prepared, right? He always has 10,000 plans for when things go wrong, and I feel like as a director, that's what you kind of got to have. You got to have a plan A, B, C, D, E, etc. And I think also that character is one that is able to be redefined every decade or so to fit what's going on. Because you had in the 2010s, like you had The Dark Knight, which is about terrorism and injustice and, issues of that time. And then you had The Batman with Robert Pattinson, which is more about like wealth inequality and climate change and those sorts of ideals. So it's a character that's very easily applicable, which is why he stayed relevant for so long. And I don't know, maybe Batman should direct a movie. He'd probably be super prepared, Wayne Enterprises got a lot of money. I'm sure they could shell out the $10 million for an indie short film or something.
Right. So this is off topic now, because
Yeah,
now
sure,
you just
go
got
for
my, okay, so.
We're off the script.
It's off topic, but. No, I'm not going to ask that. Matter of fact, because that's about to go down a rabbit hole. So.
My price is high. No,
so about Let Me In.
sure.
Was she supposed to be a villain at the end?
That's an interesting question, and I forget who it was. I think it was like a band, someone wasn't U2 or someone, where they refused to answer any interpretations because they give it to the audience and whatever the audience comes up with. At least, one thing that's interesting is I do like directors or writers who say, well, this is what I intended, but if you have your own interpretation, it's kind of out of your hands to interpret. At least from my perspective, that story was just conceptually like, from a production standpoint, I wanted to do a contained horror film because those are always cheaper to shoot, to be honest. And I wanted to do a concept one, but I noticed when doing a lot of research and watching other short horror films on YouTube and other channels that they were primarily effects-driven zombie films with a lot of shooting, blood, and makeup. And I thought that those were cool, but I didn't know from an emotional standpoint if it hit as hard as some of the other short films, like, I don't know, like A Quiet Place or something that had come out recently, where you have a family element, you have, more tension. And I always liked horror films like Silence of the Lambs that don't have overtly a lot of violence or blood compared to like a Saw movie, but for whatever reason it gets under your skin and it's a little bit more unnerving and creepy. So that's why I wanted to do a short horror film about a psychological breakdown for someone in the post-apocalypse who doesn't have access to their medications or whatever plot device you want to say, that's why she's slowly kind of losing her grip on reality.
Yeah.
And so you have the audience hook at the beginning, you're wondering who she killed, and then by the end it's kind of like that unstoppable train that's moving towards the conclusion, sort of. So, you know, is she a villain? I don't know. Maybe she's just, you know, affected by the world, right? And I guess all villains are affected by the world. But I think of it personally as like more of a tragedy, more than anything is, I guess, the intention behind that particular short film.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
So much detail there. So I wonder if there was somebody who, like you, as a child, wrote all these stories, and they want to bring it to life, but they don't even know where to start. What advice would you give to them? Like, yeah, how can they get that going?
Yeah, I would say, at least for me, just by osmosis, as I just watched so many movies, just to get the idea of rhythm, of pacing, of characters, and so many short films too. And at least for me, it's kind of like reading a lot of books, right? Before you become a writer, you see what types of writing styles you like. You see what types of characters pop off the page for you. You see for movies what type of music, what types of visuals, the timing. There's this just an unspoken kind of language to it. So it's almost like you're doing your reps. It's almost like you're practicing your cooking as you're putting in the hours. Luckily for all movie watchers, it's a little bit easier than having to, I don't know, do weightlifting or do some top athletic event. Is you're just sitting down and you're absorbing and you're kind of letting things happen and understand. So once you have a really good, you know, kind of breadth of knowledge of movies and the kind of films you want to watch, the kind of films you like to watch, you think about what do you want to see on the screen? You know, what's unique to your vision? What's unique to your experience in the world? Where do you come from? What do you want to say about who you are or the ideas or the things you're seeing around you? And then I think you want to have a strong vision. So no matter what you do, no matter how good or bad your script is or how confident you feel about it, I think having a strong vision about a project, a one-sentence summary about it, a concept photo about it, and then just, you know, to be honest, for my first short film, I was pretty happy with the script, and I just posted on Facebook, but I posted instead of just a text thread that says, you know, usually, hey, looking for producer for my movie, DM me. You're not going to get much attention.
Right.
But if you attach your photo of your you know, story, I had a screenshot from The Last of Us, which is a zombie video game that came out in 2013, and later the HBO show that just came out last year or this year. And then, you know, detailed description, you have a plot line, you have your specific needs. People respond more. And it is, to me at least, comes back to the finance, the business world where, yes, it's a creative project, but I think if you organize things and you have an idea about what you want to do, then people will respond to it and you're going to get more help that way. There's also really great resources around filmmaking and how to make films. And I watched a lot of behind the scenes movie making stuff because when it comes down to it, filmmaking is very artificial. It's very weird. It's a very weird process. I mean, when you look at it, like as an actor or as a writer, you know, yes, you make something, but, you know, I just remember having a very self-aware moment, just kind of in the flow moment when I was making Let Me In, where I realized that my only job, despite all the asks of everyone else around me, is to create a safe space for Hannah, my actress, to have this like emotional breakdown scene. So really nothing else mattered. Everything else was kind of white noise, and you have to make a little protective bubble for your actors to be able to, you know, really carry the emotion and the weight of what you do. So it's a lot of different things. You know, it's the research for your movies, it's having kind of a confident vision, it's being a good team leader if you're leading the project, if you're a writer or director, to get a good team around you. And then when you're on set, it's, you know, it's doing the reps, it's, you know, you can make a bunch of short films, you can fail, it's okay to fail. You know, it's just about doing the reps and doing the work in order to get better, right? It's like when you pick up your first weight, you're not going to lift a 45-pound Oppenheimer IMAX, you know, 300-pound weight. You're probably going to do a short film on your iPhone, or you're going to do a short film with your friends and stuff like that. So, you know, I always recommend just doing the practice, trying to get as much exposure as possible, and just build that confidence from there.
Okay. So where can we find more of your work?
So I am I'm on Instagram as @Dooley the director, Dooley the director. I also do have a YouTube channel, but primarily just due to the nature of film festivals, it usually comes, shorts are usually posted like a year afterwards.
Oh,
so if
okay.
you want to see the painter, you might have to hang around for a year. But my first short film, Let Me In, is up on my YouTube channel, Dooley Noted YT YouTube. So those are the two places primarily for my work for right now.
No,
Someone's gonna shut me up eventually.
No, it's like, because I feel like some of the things that you said, it motivates me to not stop, because what I keep doing is I start a script and then I stop because it feels intimidating. Because
Sure.
when I write short stories, it's easy. Like, you got your beginning, middle, end, and you're done with it. But then trying to write like a short film or a series is different. Like, I've never done it before, so now I'm just kind of trying.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like hearing directors like you, writers like you say like, oh, okay, well, I tried 5 times. Those won't see the light of day. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, well, one thing that I really like reading is the making of movies, how like especially like famous movies, pretty much all of them like behind the scenes are a total crap show. So like just one thing I picked up recently was like the making of, just go back, one of my inspiration movies is Star Wars. Like I read the first draft of that screenplay. The movie came out in 1977.
Right.
We started writing it in 1973, and it's a completely different movie. It is nothing, is like barely any of the elements of the original movie that came out. So, you can start at one point and end at a totally different point, or take inspiration from a show. But I think the one trap that maybe writers fall into when they start is you start with a concept, but you forget to attach a character arc or a meaningful character to it. Particularly for short films, because there's so little time for audiences to connect to them. It's important to kind of create a hook or something that you typically see in shorts. And then for feature films, it's how do you create empathy with your main character for the most part. Obviously you have movies like Joker or something that kind of flip it on its script and you're rooting for the bad guy kind of by the end. But it's at least for me to kind of go into, that ultimate question of why do you think, what keeps you going and what makes filmmaking important, what makes this art important. And, that was one question that I had thought about for a while. And it's only in the last couple of years that through the process of filmmaking has made me realize the underlying message of it. And I was watching a Steve Jobs clip, and say what you will about Steve Jobs, but he talks really well. And he was talking about what makes Nike so great. When you think about Nike, you don't think about shoes, you think about Michael Jordan, you think about Tiger Woods, you think about athletic performance. You don't think about their shoes or how nice their polyfibers are or how comfortable their shoes are, even if they are comfy. You're thinking about buying this brand means that I can achieve something greater. So that's the underlying message. So for filmmaking in our case, the thing that really drives me is filmmaking is one of the more last remaining modern ways to create empathy with people. So all film is about sharing ideas, sharing stories of different cultures, different people, different experiences, and saying something about the world. And I think it's the one way that we can create empathy without, if a film is done well, without preaching it to them. Because, film is one of the last, I would say, big, other than maybe music or maybe, there's readers, that you can create a message of empathy and share different cultural ideals without people feeling attacked by it or without people feeling like they're being lectured to. If you present a story honestly and you present it raw and you present it, balanced, then I think that's the thing that keeps me going. That's what interests me is it creates empathy for characters, and it creates people's, thinking about different concepts and ideas that they might not have before.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you have anything? Any other questions?
Oh, no.
Well, this was a bonus scene.
I I'm glad we found you in the DVD extras. You click that little menu on the bottom. We saw you. Go for it.
Subscribe.
I think we just aged ourselves.
I know. It's 1 a.m. You're really late. Get to bed. You need to get some sleep. But yeah, thank you guys for having me. This has been awesome. And can't wait to talk to you guys more and maybe see you guys down the line.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Take care.